Have you ever wondered why some people receive extraordinary graces on Saint Thérèse's day, while others leave empty-handed? Have you noticed how certain spiritual errors can block the most powerful blessings that heaven desires to pour upon your life? Dear brothers and sisters, October 1st is not just any day on the liturgical calendar. It's the feast of Saint Thérèse of the Child Jesus, the little flower who promised to make roses rain from heaven. But Saint Padre Pio, who had a special devotion to the Saint of Lisieux, warned his spiritual children about 3 grave mistakes that many Catholics make on this sacred day, preventing the most extraordinary graces from flowing into their lives. During his 50 years of ministry in San Giovanni Rotondo, Padre Pio witnessed thousands of miracles through Saint Thérèse's intercession, but he also observed a disturbing pattern. People who approached the little flower with wrong attitudes and left disappointed, while others who followed the correct little way received literally instantaneous showers of roses. If you want to receive the special graces that heaven reserves for Saint Thérèse's day, if you desire to experience the rapid miracles for which she is famous, if you need your prayers answered not in months but in minutes, then you must avoid these 3 fatal errors that block the little flower's intercession. Think for a moment. When was the last time you felt your prayers rise straight to heaven like sweet incense? When did you experience that deep certainty that God heard your request and was already acting? When did you witness an answer so quick and perfect that it took your breath away and instantly strengthened your faith? Saint Thérèse was not an ordinary saint. She discovered secrets about prayer that most adults forget. She learned that God delights in answering the requests of those who trust Him like small children trust their loving parents. She promised from heaven, "I will spend my heaven doing good on earth. I will let fall a shower of roses." But here's what most Catholics don't understand about these heavenly roses. They're not just poetic symbols or gentle consolations. They're real, tangible interventions that change circumstances, heal bodies, restore relationships, and open impossible doors. They're miracles disguised as coincidences, answers wrapped in perfect timing. Saint Padre Pio, who carried Christ's stigmata for 5 decades, had a special connection with Saint Thérèse. He would say, "The little flower knows the heart of Jesus better than any theologian. She found the elevator to heaven while others are still climbing the stairs." But Padre Pio also warned about the obstacles that prevent this spiritual elevation. Today I will share the 3 errors that Saint Padre Pio identified as blockers of Saint Thérèse's graces. These warnings saved the spiritual lives of countless devotees. They prevented people from wasting this sacred day on ineffective prayers. They opened heavenly floodgates for those who corrected their mistakes and approached the little flower the right way. If you believe that Saint Padre Pio and Saint Thérèse can transform this October 1st into your day of personal miracle, write in the comments, "I correct my errors and trust the little flower." Your declaration of humility helps this message reach more souls who desperately need this spiritual guidance. Prepare to discover how to avoid the blockages that have prevented your prayers from reaching heaven, and how to open the floodgates of divine mercy through the intercession of the Saint of Lisieux. Before revealing these 3 fatal errors, I need to help you understand why Saint Padre Pio had such a special devotion to Saint Thérèse, and why he considered it essential to protect the faithful from these spiritual mistakes. Francesco Forgione knew the story of Thérèse Martin from a young age, but it was only after receiving the stigmata in 1918 that he truly understood the depth of the French saint's little way. Both saints shared something extraordinary: simplicity that hid supernatural power, a humility that attracted miracles like a magnet attracts iron. Padre Pio frequently told his spiritual children, "Thérèse died at 24, but discovered in 2 decades what many saints take a lifetime to learn. She found the secret to moving God's heart, absolute trust united with pure love." In San Giovanni, Rotondo, Padre Pio witnessed thousands of miracles through Saint Thérèse's intercession. People given up by medicine who received instant healing after praying to the little flower. Destroyed families who reconciled on the same day they asked for her intercession. Desperate financial situations that resolved hours after consecrating their problems to the Carmelite saint. But Padre Pio also observed a worrying pattern. Many people approached Saint Thérèse with attitudes completely opposite to her teaching. They came with pride instead of humility, with demands instead of trust, with complications instead of simplicity. And these people left empty, not because the saint was deaf to their requests, but because they themselves blocked the graces that heaven desired to pour out. The little flower, explained Padre Pio, can only help those who become small like her. God resists the proud, but gives grace to the humble. Whoever approaches Thérèse with the heart of a child receives showers of roses. Whoever comes with the heart of a complicated adult returns empty-handed. During decades of spiritual direction, Saint Padre Pio identified three main errors that prevented people from receiving Saint Thérèse's extraordinary graces. They were always the same mistakes, repeated by different people, blocking the same blessings that heaven desired to grant. The first error was lack of simplicity. People who created elaborate prayers, complicated novenas, complex rituals, thinking they would impress the saint with their spiritual sophistication. Padre Pio explained, Thérèse responds to pleas said with faith, not to theological speeches said with pride. The second error was lack of trust. Devotees who asked for the saint's intercession but had already decided how God should solve their problems. They prayed but actually tried to instruct heaven about methods and deadlines. The little flower, said Padre Pio, only works where there is total trust. She needs freedom to surprise with divine wisdom. The third error was lack of abandonment. People who asked for graces but maintained alternative plans, backup schemes as if God might fail. They prayed with one foot in prayer and the other in self-reliance. Padre Pio warned, those who don't abandon themselves completely into God's hands through Thérèse remain bound to their own limitations. These three errors, lack of simplicity, trust, and abandonment, were like spiritual walls that prevented heavenly roses from falling. Not because Saint Thérèse was demanding, but because these attitudes blocked the channels through which divine grace flows. Imagine, explained Padre Pio, a child who asks something from their father but with closed hands. How can they receive what the father wants to give? So are those who approach the little flower with pride, distrust, and self-sufficiency. They have spiritually closed hands to receive heaven's roses. Today on Saint Thérèse's feast day, you have the opportunity to avoid these three fatal errors and completely open your heart to receive the shower of graces that the little flower desires to pour upon your life. Each error you correct is a heavenly floodgate that opens. Each attitude you humbly adjust is a channel that unblocks to let miracles pass through. The first fatal error that Saint Padre Pio warned about on Saint Thérèse's day is spiritual complication. This is the most common mistake among well-intentioned Catholics who transform evangelical simplicity into unnecessary religious elaboration. Padre Pio observed that many people approached Saint Thérèse on her feast day, creating long and complicated prayers, elaborate novenas with multiple stages, complex rituals that looked more like magical formulas than intimate conversations with a heavenly friend. They thought they would impress the little flower with their spiritual sophistication. This is exactly the opposite of the path that Thérèse taught, explained Padre Pio to his spiritual children. She found God in the simplicity of a child who speaks naturally to the loving Father. When we complicate this simplicity, we're rejecting the very teaching of the saint we want to help us. Think about your own experience. How many times have you caught yourself formulating elaborate prayers, thinking you needed to impress heaven with fancy words or grandiose promises? How many novenas have you started thinking that the quantity of prayers was more important than the quality of trust? Saint Thérèse discovered something revolutionary. God prefers a sincere "help me" to a half-hour prayer full of empty words. She wrote, "For me, prayer is an impulse of the heart. It is a simple glance cast toward heaven. It is a cry of recognition and love, both in the midst of trial and in the midst of joy." Padre Pio used to tell the story of two women who came asking for Saint Thérèse's intercession on the same day. The first spent an hour explaining her situation in detail, quoting Bible verses promising elaborate sacrifices if she were heard. The second simply said, "Thérèse, my son is sick. Please help me." The first woman left without receiving an answer. The second received news the next day that her son's medical exams showed inexplicable improvement. The difference, explained Padre Pio, was in the simplicity. The first spoke with her head full of words. The second spoke with her heart full of trust. Here's how you should approach Saint Thérèse today, following Saint Padre Pio's teaching. Don't prepare elaborate speeches. Don't create complicated rituals. Don't try to impress with your religious erudition. Simply talk to her like a child talks to an older sister they love very much. Sit in a quiet place. Look at an image of Saint Thérèse or simply close your eyes and imagine her gentle, smiling face. Take 3 deep breaths and let all complication leave your mind. Now speak to her in the most natural way possible. "Thérèse, I need your help." Tell her exactly what's happening in your life without flourishes or unnecessary explanations. She already knows everything but wants to hear from you because this creates intimacy. "I trust you. I know you'll talk to Jesus for me. Thank you for the help that's already coming." That's it. Simple as that. No complicated protocols, no special formulas, no memorized prayers that don't come from the heart. Padre Pio guaranteed. This simplicity opens Thérèse's heart like a key opens a door. She cannot resist childlike trust. I remember Teresa, a mother who came to San Giovanni Rotondo desperate because her husband had lost his job, and they didn't even have money to feed their children. She had spent weeks doing complicated novenas, lighting candles in different churches, promising sacrifices she could barely fulfill. When she came before Padre Pio, he simply said, "My daughter, stop complicating. Go to the chapel, look at Saint Thérèse and say, 'I need work for my husband today.' That's it." Teresa thought it was too simple, but obeyed. That same afternoon, a neighbor knocked on her door offering her husband work at his company. "The little flower," said Padre Pio later, "was waiting for her to stop talking so much so she could act." Don't make the error of spiritual complication today. Saint Thérèse promised to make roses rain, not hail of difficult words. She wants your simple trust, not your religious performance. Approach her like a child approaches someone they love, directly, sincerely, without artifice. After correcting the first error, you've already opened the first heavenly floodgate. But there's a second error even more subtle that can completely block the little flower's intercession, the second fatal error that Saint Padre Pio warned about on Saint Thérèse's day is distrust disguised as prudence. This mistake is more dangerous than the first because often we don't even realize we're committing it. Padre Pio observed that many people asked for Saint Thérèse's intercession, but at the same time had already elaborated detailed plans about how God should solve their problems. They prayed but actually tried to give instructions to heaven about methods, deadlines, and results. This is not prayer, explained Padre Pio firmly. It's negotiation. And the little flower doesn't negotiate. She intercedes. There's a huge difference between asking for help and giving orders disguised as requests. This distrust manifests in various subtle forms. You ask for a job but have already determined what type of work you accept, in which neighborhood with what minimum salary. You ask for healing but only accept certain treatments or doctors. You ask for family reconciliation, but establish conditions about how the other person should apologize. Saint Thérèse discovered something that revolutionized her spiritual life. God knows exactly what we need and when we need it, but He knows solutions that our limited mind would never imagine. She wrote, "I abandon myself into the hands of the good God like a little child abandons itself in the arms of its father." Padre Pio used to use a powerful analogy. Imagine a sick child who asks their doctor father to cure them, but demands that he only use band-aids because they're afraid of injections. The father wants to heal, but the child limits the treatment. This is what we do with God when we ask for miracles but determine how they should happen. I personally knew many cases documented by Padre Pio, where this distrust blocked extraordinary miracles. A lady asked Saint Thérèse to save her marriage, but was determined that this could only happen if her husband completely changed his personality. She couldn't trust that God could restore love without transforming her spouse into a different person. The prayer wasn't answered while she maintained this limitation. Only when she finally said, "Thérèse, save my marriage in whatever way is best for both of us, even if I don't understand how," did the miracle happen. But it came in a completely unexpected way. She was the one who changed, and this change awakened the dormant love in her husband's heart. Here's how you should surrender your requests to Saint Thérèse today. Following Saint Padre Pio's teaching about true trust, after making your simple and direct request, add these crucial words that completely open the channels of grace. Thérèse, I trust you in Jesus. You know better than I what I need and when I need it. It might be different from what I'm imagining. It might come in a way I didn't expect. It might take more or less time than I think. I accept in advance the answer that heaven has for me, because I know it will be perfect. This prayer of abandonment is like signing a blank check to God. You're saying, I trust your love so much that I allow you to surprise me with your wisdom. And Saint Thérèse loves these divine surprises. She specializes in solutions no one would imagine, but that work perfectly. Padre Pio guaranteed, when we truly abandon our problems into the little flower's hands, she gains total freedom to operate miracles. But while we keep one hand in prayer and the other in control, we tie her hands too. A merchant from Foggia was going bankrupt and asked Saint Thérèse for a financial miracle, but he had already determined that he needed a specific bank loan of a certain amount, approved by an exact date. When none of this happened, he lost faith in the saint's intercession. Padre Pio advised him, you asked for a miracle, but gave the address where you wanted to receive it. Allow the little flower to choose both the miracle and the way to deliver it. The man finally abandoned his plans and simply asked, Thérèse, save my business however you think best. A week later, a fire at a competitor's warehouse created enormous demand for his products. In a month, he not only emerged from bankruptcy but prospered more than he had ever dreamed. The miracle, said Padre Pio, was waiting for him to stop giving instructions so it could happen. Don't make the error of distrust disguised as prudence. Saint Thérèse knows Jesus' heart better than anyone. She knows exactly how to convince him to act in your favor. But she needs total freedom to surprise you with divine solutions that your human limitations would never conceive. With the first two errors corrected, you've already unblocked powerful channels of grace. But there's a third error, the most subtle of all, that can completely nullify all your spiritual progress. The third and most dangerous error that Saint Padre Pio warned about on Saint Thérèse's day is incomplete abandonment. This is the hardest mistake to detect, because it seems like virtue, but actually reveals lack of deep faith. Padre Pio explained, "Many people make beautiful prayers, apparently surrender their problems completely, but maintain secret backup plans as if God might fail. They say, 'Thy will be done,' but continue elaborating their own will as an alternative. This incomplete abandonment manifests in very subtle ways. You ask Saint Thérèse for a job, but continue sending out resumes desperately as if the answer depended only on your effort. You ask for healing, but obsessively seek alternative treatments as if the miracle were unlikely. You ask for reconciliation but secretly plan how to live without the loved person. There's nothing wrong with acting prudently," clarified Padre Pio. "The error is in acting without faith, as if our prayer were just decorative ritual while the real work happens through purely human means." Saint Thérèse lived complete abandonment in a radical way. When she was dying of tuberculosis, she didn't cling even to life itself. She said, "I am not dying. I am entering life." This total surrender allowed God to operate through her, miracles that continue happening more than a century. After her death, the difference between complete and incomplete abandonment is subtle but decisive. In complete abandonment, you act humanly but expect supernaturally. In incomplete, you pray supernaturally but trust only humanly. Padre Pio used this illustration. A farmer plants the seed and waters it, but doesn't dig every day to see if it sprouted. He does his part and patiently waits for God to do his part. Whoever prays truly acts responsibly but rests confidently. I remember Francesco, a young man from Bari who asked Saint Thérèse for help to pass the civil service exam he had taken. He made the prayer, surrendered the result, but couldn't stop calculating points, imagining scenarios, planning alternatives in case he didn't pass. "My son," said Padre Pio, "you prayed with your mouth but your mind hasn't stopped working for a minute. How can you receive God's peace if you don't stop trying to solve everything alone?" Francesco admitted he was afraid to trust completely because what if God said no? "There's the problem," explained Padre Pio. "You're afraid of God's no because you don't trust that He always has something better reserved." The little flower learned that every divine no is a yes to something infinitely superior. Francesco finally managed to abandon his anxiety completely. He stopped calculating, worrying, making alternative plans. He simply said, "Thérèse, if I'm supposed to pass, let me pass. If not, I know you have something better for me." A deep peace took over his heart. He didn't pass the exam. But 3 days later, he received a much better job offer at a private company, with superior salary and growth possibilities that public service would never offer. "The little flower," said Padre Pio, "saved the best for when he stopped clinging to second best." Here's how you should practice complete abandonment today on Saint Thérèse's day. After making your simple request and surrendering with total trust, take this final step that completely frees the little flower's power of intercession. Take a deep breath and declare aloud, "Thérèse, now I completely surrender this problem into your hands. I will no longer worry. I will no longer try to solve it alone. I will no longer make backup plans. If God says yes, I will praise. If He says no, I will trust. If He says wait, I will rest. From now on, this is no longer my problem. It's your responsibility before Jesus." Now comes the most important part. Live as if the problem were already solved. Not because you know what the solution will be, but because you trust there will be a perfect solution at the right time. This attitude of spiritual rest is what allows Saint Thérèse to operate freely. Padre Pio guaranteed, when someone truly surrenders a problem to Saint Thérèse, they can go to sleep peacefully that same night. Not because they know what will happen, but because they know who is taking care of what needs to happen. A widow surrendered her desperate financial problems this way. That night she slept better than she had in months. The next morning, without anxiety, without hurry, she went to the bank to resolve some minor pending issues. There she met by chance an old friend who offered her partnership in a prosperous business. The miracle, explained Padre Pio, was waiting for her to stop chasing solutions so it could find her in the natural path of life. Don't make the error of incomplete abandonment. Saint Thérèse can only work freely when you really let go of control. While part of you is still trying to solve things, you're tying the hands that want to act. On this October 1st, you have the unique opportunity to avoid the 3 fatal errors that Saint Padre Pio identified as blockers of Saint Thérèse's graces. Each error you consciously correct is a heavenly floodgate that opens completely. Avoid spiritual complication. Approach the little flower with the simplicity of a child who naturally talks to a dear friend. Don't try to impress with elaborate prayers. She prefers your sincere pleas to your memorized theological speeches. Avoid distrust disguised as prudence. Surrender your requests with total trust, allowing God to surprise you with solutions your limited mind would never imagine. Saint Thérèse specializes in impossible miracles that happen in unexpected ways. Avoid incomplete abandonment. After praying, really stop worrying. Stop making backup plans. Stop trying to solve things alone. Live as if the problem were already in the right hands, because it really is. These aren't just spiritual advice. They're practical keys that open the treasury of divine mercy through the intercession of the saint who promised to spend her heaven doing good on earth. Thousands of people over more than a century have experienced the shower of roses that Saint Thérèse makes fall upon those who approach her correctly. Saint Padre Pio, who carried Christ's stigmata and witnessed countless miracles, guaranteed that these 3 spiritual adjustments transform ordinary prayers into irresistible prayers. The little flower, he said, cannot resist confident simplicity that abandons itself completely into her hands. If this message has touched your heart, if you recognize that you've been making some of these errors, if you desire to correct your spiritual approach to Saint Thérèse, write in the comments, "I correct my errors and trust." The little flower, your declaration of humility, helps this message reach more souls who need this spiritual guidance. Share this warning from Saint Padre Pio with someone you know who is struggling in prayers that seem unheard. Maybe this is exactly what this person needs to unblock the graces that heaven desires to pour into their life. Like this video if it brought light to your spiritual doubts. Your support helps us continue spreading these teachings that can transform lives of prayer. Consider becoming a member of our community, so you never miss messages that could revolutionize your spiritual life. Together we're building a family of faith that grows in simplicity, trust, and abandonment to divine care. May Saint Thérèse of the Child Jesus make a shower of roses fall upon you this October 1st. May your prayers, corrected from these 3 fatal errors, rise like sweet incense to God's throne. May you experience today the rapid miracles for which the little flower is famous worldwide. May heaven always be with you. Amen. Why?